President, please be seated. The court is now back in session. Without further ado, we would like to now hand over to the co-prosecutors to continue putting questions. Co-prosecutor, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, before we broke, you indicated that Kampong Kdai market is 7 kilometers away from Pung Ro Security Center. Can you tell the chamber, please, how often do you go to this market? Response: I only came to the Kampong Kdai market as ordered or instructed by the head of the security. I did not go there on my own accord. Question: what was it that you were sent to Kampong Kdai market? What was the assignment? Response: I was sent to Kampong Kdai market to search for people who had to be brought to the detention center. We were supposed to bring those who had committed some offenses to go there, to the detention facility. I did not come alone. I would come with other colleagues of mine at the security center. Question: what kind of people were being detained at the Kampong Kdai center? Response: people who had to be detained at Pung Ro Security Office were those who committed some moral misconducts with young women. These people were evacuees and people who were former London officials or soldiers were not brought to that security center. Only civilians would be brought there, civilians who committed such crimes as indicated. Question: where exactly were these former officials or soldiers detained? Response: the former officials or soldiers of the London regime who had been evacuated to Kampong Kdai had not been detained. They were brought in and interrogated. It was not part of the security force to put questions or to question them. They were just summarily interrogated and sent out to be executed. Question: can you confirm or can you clarify how you knew that those people were former soldiers or officials of London regime? Response: it is not difficult to say so, because these people who came talked to us or told us about this. So people could be heard saying about the identification of those people. They told us about senior officials and soldiers of the former regime who had been brought in to the location. And I also heard when I was at Kampong Kadai, and I did not go directly to that location, but I could see these people were heavily guarded by the Khmer Rouge soldiers, and every now and then the soldiers would fire some gunshots to scare the people not to escape. Question. I have read your written record of interview, and you stated in that interview that the former officials and soldiers of Lon Nol were detained at Chikrang market or location, and they were heavily guarded days and nights. Can you tell the chamber, please, who were assigned to stand guard at that location? Response. People who were guarded, who guarded the location were not known to me, because I have no idea from which unit they were, and I just heard from the people, the villagers who told me about this. Question. According to your interview, the same interview before the investigating judges, you indicated that these people were senior soldiers and former officials and families of the Lon Nol's regime who had been evacuated from Siem Reap. These people were taken out to be executed with the pretext that they would be sent for education or study sessions. There were several hundred of them who had been transported out to be executed, and they were killed by security personnel of Pung Ro, and they executed them at Makak location. For record, I would like to cite this document, D125/127, English ERN 00225210 through 11. French ERN is 00239976. Do you still remember how long would it take for all the people to be taken out for execution? Response. I am afraid I cannot be precise as to how many days or how long that would take before all those people had been carried away, sent out and executed. Question. When it comes to execution, were all the people related to these people executed, including their children and spouses? Response. To put it simply, everyone was killed. None was spared. Everyone who was brought in was sent out to be executed altogether. Question. You also mentioned that the people who executed them were security guards at Pung Ro, and the execution was carried out at Makak. How did you know that the security forces or people killed those former officials and soldiers at that location? Response: I learned about this because these people who carried out the execution told me upon returning from the place where these people had been killed. Question: were only security personnel at Pung Ro involved in the execution, or other people were also engaged in such act? Response: these executions were carried out by not only the security personnel of their detention center, but that they were also carried out by other Khmer Rouge soldiers from which unit I don't remember. Question: were you aware of who was or were in charge of the execution, the arrangement for executions, for example? Response: when it comes to who, I don't think I remember who they were, but my recollection serves me very well that these people were from the sector, and there were about a few security personnel, about 4 of them, who were engaged in the executions. Nonetheless, I don't know for sure who was in charge of such arrangements. Question: when you refer to sector, which sector are you referring to? Response: I am referring to the Siem Reap and Udar Mien Chai sector, but I don't know exactly as to how the sector was organized. Question: you talked about Makak. Where is it? Is it located far from the Pung Ro Security Center? Response: Makak is located far from Pung Ro Security Center. It is now known as Makak Dam. However, I don't know exactly how far it is precisely. It perhaps is 10 kilometers away from this center. It's my pure estimation. Question: can you also say to which direction Makak is as opposed to the Pung Ro Center or Security Center? Response: the Makak execution site is to the northwest of Pung Ro Security Center. Question. Personally, had you ever seen any of the execution carried out on these people? Any of these people? Response. No, I hadn't. I personally never saw this. I only learned about this from people who were engaged in the executions and who came from the side and told me about what happened. Counsel, co-prosecutor. Thank you, Mr. President and Mr. Witness. I have no further questions to put to the witness, and I thank him very much indeed for his responses. The President, thank you. Now, International Co-Prosecutor, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon, Mr. Witness. My name is Dale Lysack, and I have a few more questions for you this afternoon. Mr. President, I'd like to start by showing the witness another document, which is document D83, Annex 00012. It is a report that contains an interview attributed to the witness that was conducted in July of 1991. The specific pages that I would like to ask the witness about, it is a long document. However, the interview that I would like to ask him about begins at Khmer ERN 00812-860, and the English ERN for the start of the interview is 00164-153, French ERN 00779-381. I have a copy that we can provide to the witness, and we'd also request permission to show excerpts on the screen as we proceed.
The President, you may proceed. Court officer is now instructed to bring the document to the witness for examination, and that the document is allowed to be put up on the screens.
Mr. Witness, as you look at that document, my first question for you is whether you recall being interviewed by a Frenchman named Henri Locard way back in July of 1991 at the Siem Reap Grand Hotel. Do you recall a meeting with that person?
The President, witness, please hold on. Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia, you're on your feet. You may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. An objection, just technicality, one might say, but I believe it is still your practice that the witness needs to be asked whether or not he has seen the document. If he has not seen the document, it would need to be removed and possibly also removed from the screen. It's not necessarily a rule that we agree with, but I think it's been applied throughout the board, and I would request you to proceed along these lines.
Mr. President, that is an incorrect statement of the practices. There have been many circumstances where it is appropriate, where a witness has been allowed to look at a document that they have not seen before. Certainly one situation where this has occurred before is a document that contains an interview attributed to the witness. So I think the first thing is for me to ask a few questions to the witness to establish that there is a proper foundation, and if so, this is something that has occurred in the past.
The President, Councillor Canawas, you may now proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also am of the understanding that this gentleman is slated to come and give evidence as a witness. If that is indeed the case, then are we not back into the situation that we saw ourselves before with authors such as Philip Short? So I believe we are back to using documents of a witness who's about to come, who is yet to come, and you were using it with a witness. We need clearer guidance whether this is permissible or whether it falls under one of the previous objections that you've ruled upon.
Mr. President, just to be clear, I am not going to be asking this witness about any comments or observations of Henri Locard. What I am going to be asking the witness about is statements that are attributed to the witness. That is a situation on which we have been able to proceed before. For example, when we were questioning Mr. Pipon, he had been interviewed by Philip Short, and there were statements attributed to him in Philip Short's book. In that situation, it is clearly appropriate to be able to ask the witness about that. It's a far different matter if I started to ask him questions about comments or conclusions of Henri Locard, in which case I would agree with Mr. Carnavas.
The President, the Chamber wishes to rule on the objection by counsel concerning the line of questioning by the prosecutor to the witness with regard to the use of this document. The objection is somehow not sustained. The Chamber once ruled on the same case, and that this document was citing or alluded to, attributed directly to this witness. For that reason, parties are allowed to use such document during the examination of the relevant witness.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Witness, my first question is, do you recall being interviewed by Mr. Henri Locard back in July 1991 at the Siem Reap Grand Hotel?
Response: Yes, I do. I met with Mr. Henri Locard, and the interview was conducted at the Grand Hotel. I was pleased with him and interview, and I have had some rapport with with Mr. Henri Locard, and for that I do confirm that I did give such interview on that date.
Thank you. I'd like you to refer first to a statement that is attributed to you on Khmer page 00812-860, which is English 00164-153, and French ERN 00779-382. That statement reads as follows, quote, "The Viet Cong, followed by a few KR," assuming that refers to the Khmer Rouge, first occupied his home village in May 1970. The Viet Cong were on the first line, and the KR followed in black clothes with the Viet Cong. He heard Sihanouk's announcement on Peking radio campaigning for the National Reconciliation Front, asking people to join him in the Forest Maquis. Because Sihanouk declared from Peking that he was the president of the front to fight against the American colonialists and imperialists, the inhabitants welcomed the revolutionaries. They gave their children. He was the fifth of a family of 9 children, and 2 joined the revolutionaries. His small younger brother, who was then only 8, and himself, who was 16, were enrolled. End of quote. First, is this an accurate statement of information that you provided to Monsieur Locard back in July of 1991?
I did provide information to Monsieur Henri Locard, and of course it is correct that I did have an interview with him at that time.
It states in this document that your younger brother joined the revolution at the age of 8 years old. Can you tell us what your younger brother was assigned to do when he joined the revolution at the age of 8 years?
The place where my younger brother, at the age of 8 at that time, was not correct. Actually, I think that that could have been a misrepresentation of what I said, because my younger brother, when he was 8, he did not join the revolution. But I myself did join the revolution back then. I would like to ask you to rectify this portion of the statement, because my younger brother did not join the revolution then.
Did he join the revolution later?
Well, later on, my brother also joined the Khmer Rouge forces, but it was not before 1975. It was actually post-1975. It could have been sometime in 1976 or so. Or rather, he could have joined it sometime in 1976, of course, 1976. He joined the Khmer Rouge forces in that year. That is the truth. Of course, he joined the revolution, but the statement that he joined the revolution when he was 8 was wrong. He actually joined the revolution in 1976.
Thank you for correcting that. My next question concerns whether you recall any leaders of the Khmer Rouge coming to visit or speak in your district in 1971, 1972, or 1973.
Yes, there were leaders who came to that place, and that portion of the record is correct.
There is a reference in your interview with Henri Locard to one of these incidents that I would like to ask you about. It appears at Khmer ERN 00812-861, English 00164-153, and French 00779-382. And this part of the interview states as follows, quote, towards 1973, Hu Yun came to deliver a speech in the forest at Pum Pre Tom, Kok Klork Lu Commune. PCCS, Mr. Locard refers to you in this interview by your initials. PCCS did not attend the meeting, but many Mulatan were present. Hu Yun encouraged the people to make their contribution to this military struggle in order to overthrow Lon Nol. According to Hu Yun's words, the KR wanted to sever links with the Viet Cong. End of quote. Is this a correct statement of information that you provided to Mr. Locard regarding Hu Yun's speech?
The President. Witness, please hold on. The International Defense Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chie is on his feet. You may proceed, Counsel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I object to this line of questioning. We have been over this last week as well. prosecutor is clearly free to explore this issue, but the way he asks the questions should not be leading, and he should not be feeding the witness with information that he may not now today remember. A proper way to ask this question would have been, did he remember Hu Yun's visit to wherever he was at that time, and does he remember what Hu Yun spoke about? If the witness is fed this information in this way, it taints the evidence of this particular witness. If the witness indicates he does not remember, which I would submit is not unlikely, then the prosecutor can reach for this earlier statement and try to refresh the memory of the witness. I understand we're trying to be expedient here, but we should try to establish what the witness remembers today. So I would submit that the prosecutor asks open-ended questions and then to follow up with earlier statements if he wants to refresh the memory of the witness.
Mr. President, I am happy to proceed in whatever manner the court wishes. My understanding was where we have prior statements of a witness, we can put them to the witness and ask questions. I'm happy to proceed in the manner that he has suggested. That will take longer, but that is at your discretion. But the practice that we have been following since we received a memorandum from the trial chamber in order to expedite questions is to put prior statements to witnesses and to ask them follow-up questions.
The President, we note the objection by the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chie, and the chamber wishes to advise the prosecutor that you rephrase your question, and your question has to be open in nature.
Thank you, Mr. President. A few moments ago, Mr. Witness, you told us that you remembered a number of leaders coming to visit or speak in Chi Krang district prior to 1975. Can you tell us which leaders you remember coming to your district?
To my recollection, Mr. Hu Yun came to Prey Thom, and this was also recorded by Monsieur Henry Loka, and that is the correct record, and it also reflected my statement to him as well. So he came to propagandize in that area. But I myself did not join the propaganda. Only the base people were allowed to take part in the propaganda. They all assembled at Prey Thom village. And I learned the information about what was announced at that propaganda campaign through the people who represented each district who attended this propaganda. And as far as I remember, at that time, the message was to chase away the Viet Cong, and that was also the information I shared with Hong Di Loka at that time.
Did you ever see Noon Chea, Ing Sari, or Mr. Ku Sampan come to Chi Krang district at any time?
As for Nuon Chea, Ieng Sari, and Khieu Sampon, they never came to Chi Krang district. I never saw them in the district. They never attended any rally or propaganda in Chi Krang district.
Thank you. Can you tell us when Chi Krang district was liberated by Khmer Rouge forces? What year did that take place?
The Khmer Rouge liberated Chi Krang district and the whole country on the 17th of April 1975. They liberated the country from the administration of Lon Nol, and it was on the 17th of April 1975.
My question specifically concerns Chi Krang district. What year was it that Khmer Rouge forces controlled that district, that part of the country?
For Chi Krang district, the Khmer Rouge took control of this area in 1970. Following the coup d'etat, the Khmer Rouge took control of that area of the province. It was soon after the coup d'etat. That territory was under the control of the Khmer Rouge since then.
Do you recall when it was that cooperatives were first established in your district?
The cooperative, which were established by the Khmer Rouge in my district, was in 1972. It was the cooperative of the commune and village. I only knew the establishment date of cooperative in my own locality. I did not know the date of establishment of other cooperatives across the country.
On that subject, I'd like to refer you to another excerpt from your interview with Henri Locard. And again, this is document D83, Annex 00012. The reference is at Khmer 00812-861, English 00164-153, and French ERN 00779-382. And there's a short statement that's attributed to you that says, quote, from 1970 to 1974, inhabitants still lived in their families, end of quote. And what I wanted to have you clarify about that statement is what happened after 1974.
សូមខ្ញុំសូម I am afraid I do not understand this question, so I cannot answer it. I do not understand the question.
សូមលោកបញ្ជាក់ម្ដងទៀត
Could you please repeat your question?
Was there a period of time in your district where families were no longer allowed to live together?
បាទ
In 1970, people and residents live together in their families. And then the Khmer Rouge encouraged people to resist against colonial administration. So the sons and daughters of villagers rallied the Khmer Rouge. So they separated some of their children, went to the forest in order to take refuge over there or to join with the resistant forces. And then as for the parents, they may stay back at home and join the cooperatives for the village. And the Khmer Rouge also encouraged the younger people at that time to join their forces.
Your statement, your interview that you gave to the co-investigating judges indicates that you began working at the Pongro Security Office around 1972. Can you tell us what your position or what your function was at the security office when you first started working there in 1972?
I assumed I worked at the security office, and my role at that time was a clerk, and I was tasked to prepare documents and keep records of prisoners, the dossier of each prisoner. So in other words, I am the documentary custodian in the security center, or to put it simply, at that time I was a clerk in charge of keeping the record.
And the Pongro Security Office, was this a district, a sector, or a zone security office?
Pongro Security Office was the district security office of the Khmer Rouge organization. It did not belong to the sector or zone committee, and that security office was attached to Pongro district.
And when you first started at the security office, did the Khmer Rouge have a district secretary or a district committee in place at that time whose responsibilities included the security office?
When I was working there, the Khmer Rouge established the organizational structure of the security office. The first secretary was Tavan, and then later on Tavan was arrested, Then another one, Takun, was assigned to take his place. And then later on, Takun was accused of betraying the organization. Then he was also arrested. So they established the organization structure. They also established the underground organization. And the Youth League, as well as the party members, were part of this underground organization. So normally they have 2 party members as the members. And as for the 8 of this underground organization, were the representative from the Youth League of the Khmer Rouge. So in this underground organization was a very secretive organization, and I was not aware of how this underground movement worked. I did not know, but the only thing I knew was that the members of this underground organization were the party members and the Youth League. But as for me, I was not part of this underground organization. That is the truth of what was going on at the time.
Thank you. Did your superiors at the security office give you any explanation as to what the purpose of that office was back in 1972 or 1973?
At the time, they explained us back and forth about the security office. They told us that it was the place for prisoners' re-education. So they could refashion the prisoner before they were sent back to their respective locality. But during the imprisonment or the so-called re-education, some of them were killed. Of course, they said of good things. They wanted to re-educate them, but the deeper purpose of it was to execute them. So they did not live up to what they told them.
I'd like to refer you now to another statement in your interview with Henri Locard. This one appears at Khmer page 00812-862, English ERN 00164-154, and French ERN 00779-383. And the quote that I would like to ask you about is as follows. Quote, "It was a security center. It was meant for the entire population to fear the power of Angkar. Angkar had told PCCS, referring to you, that all the inmates were imperialists and capitalists. The power of Angkar would terrorize them." End of quote. Who was it that had told you that all the inmates were imperialists and capitalists?
The person who told me that the inmates were the imperialists or capitalists were the chief of security officers and their associates. They considered the inmates as imperialists and capitalists. That's what they propagandized in order to convince people. Most of the times, they were the security officers and leaders of that security office.
My colleague has asked you questions about officials and soldiers of the Lon Nol regime who were evacuated from Siem Reap on or shortly after the 17th of April 1975. I would like to ask you whether any captured Lon Nol soldiers were ever brought to the Pongro Security Office prior to 17 April 1975.
As for Lon Nol soldiers who were evacuated in 1975, they were not captured and sent to Pungro Security Office. They were all executed instantly upon capture. But before 1975, there were some soldiers who surrendered. Then the Khmer Rouge captured them, and they were placed in the security office. So, but that was before 1975. Those soldiers who surrendered and gave up, and they joined they came to the territory controlled by the Khmer Rouge, and they were arrested and sent to the security office. But other soldiers who were around in 1975, they were captured and killed instantly.
What happened to the Lon Nol soldiers who were taken to the Pongro Security Office?
Response. The soldiers whom I saw detained at that vicinity were later on executed. There were about 4 people in total in charge of security. No, rather, there were 4 people detained, and some of whom managed to run away. The rest had been executed.
I'd like to refer you to another excerpt from your interview with Henri Locard. This excerpt is at Khmer 00812-863, English 00164-155, and French ERN 00779-384. And on that page, there is a statement attributed to you that states as follows, quote, "When Lon Nol soldiers were captured, they were immediately killed," end of quote. Can you tell me who were the Lon Nol soldiers that you were referring to when you told Henri Locard this?
Response. With regard to the point I mentioned to Henri Locard, the Lon Nol soldiers who had been evacuated from Siem Reap on 17th of April 1975, they were arriving Kampong Kdai, and after some interrogations, they had been loaded onto the trucks and executed. And I believe that Henri Locard is consistent in his account when he quoted what I talked to him back then on this.
Thank you. I'm going to turn now to the issue of the evacuation. My colleague has asked you most of the questions that we would like to on that. There's one issue that I would like to clarify. You indicated in your OCIJ statement that the Lon Nol officials and soldiers who were brought to the Chi Krang market were transported away in trucks. Did you see any of these people being transported in trucks?
Response. No, I did not see this personally. I heard about it through the people who had transported the former Lon soldiers and who were executed at Makak location. I remember having heard them say that these people were blindfolded, all of them, including their young children, were executed, and I heard all about this from them.
And when you say them, how many people told you about this event?
Response. 3 people told me about this, and these people used to live in the same village as mine. So because we were close, he or they had nothing to hide.
And you indicated that in addition to the Lon Nol officials and soldiers who were taken to the Chi Krang market and then taken away for execution, that there were other civilians who were evacuated from Siem Reap to your district. Do you recall approximately how many civilians were evacuated from Siem Reap to Chi Krang district after or on or after the 17th of April, 1975?
Response. As to how many evacuees were brought to Chi Krang, I'm afraid I don't know. However, people who were evacuated to Chi Krang were not necessarily those who were from Siem Reap alone. There were also people evacuated from elsewhere. For the senior soldiers of the former regime, they all were executed by the Khmer Rouge.
Where were the other locations from where evacuees were sent to your district?
Response. The evacuees were sent to remote rural area or far-flung country, and they treated these people as the 17th of April, and they were brought to the very hard place to live and work. I don't remember exactly to which villages they would be sent to, but for sure I know that these people had been sent to the very far rural areas.
And do you know whether these civilian evacuees, 17 April people, do you know whether they were required to provide biographies when they arrived in Chi Krang district?
Response. I have learned about this from the base, from the local people. For example, upon arriving, the chief of village would be informed about where the evacuees could have been brought from, so that village chiefs were at the ready to receive them temporarily. Indeed, the village chiefs would be informed of where the evacuees would be taken from.
Do you know whether there was any effort made to try to identify people within the civilian evacuees who might have connections to the Lord Nol regime?
Response. During the Khmer Rouge regime, the Khmer Rouge did not like the 17th of April people. They did their best to hunt for every detail concerning the background of each and individual evacuee or the 17th of April person, and if they learned about this, the person would end up being executed. So to put it simply, the Khmer Rouge were not pleased with the 17th of April people. The President intervenes. Thank you, Mr. Co-Prosecutor, and thank you, witness. The Chamber would like to adjourn briefly, and the next session will be resumed by 3 o'clock. Court officer is now instructed to assist Mr. Witness and his jury counsel during the adjournment and have them return to the courtroom accordingly.
សូមអញ្ជើញក្រោកឈរ